All right, completing the square is another method to solving quadratics. We have graphed, we have factored, okay? Now here, completing the square, the first part of these notes is taking you through the steps in the process in doing the operation of completing the square, okay? So first, an important part of being able to do completing the square is we have to be able to make perfect square trinomials. So a perfect square trinomial is a trinomial that is equal to the square of a binomial. Okay, perfect square trinomial is a trinomial that is equal to the square of a binomial. So below A, B, and C, these binomials squared, if you FOILed them, they would give you perfect square trinomials. Okay. First, x squared, outer negative 3x, inner negative 3x, last positive 9. X squared minus 6x plus 9 is a perfect square trinomial, okay? One way you can identify perfect square trinomials is if you took the square root of the first term. What's the square root of x squared?
X.
Okay, what's the square root of 9? 3. Sign in the middle, negative x minus 3 squared there, okay? B, 2n plus 3 squared. All right, if you FOILed it, first would give you 4n squared. Outer would give you plus 6n. Inner plus 6n. Last would be plus 9. 4n squared plus 12n plus 9. Okay. What's the square root of 4n squared?
2n.
What's the square root of 9?
3.
Miss sign in the middle. Plus. All right. Also, too, what you'll hear people say, what you'll hear me say, when you have a binomial squared, you can always FOIL. All right. But you'll also hear people say square, double, square. Okay. Square, double, square. First term squared is x squared. Multiply them together and double it gives you negative 6x. Negative 3 squared is 9. Okay. Square, first term squared, 4n squared. Multiply together, 6n, double, gives you 12n. Last term squared gives you 9. Square, double, square. Okay, you don't have to do that. You can always FOIL. A lot of kids catch on to the square, double, square and like doing that instead of FOILing. Okay, personal choice and preference. Okay. All right, last right here, a plus b squared. It shows you the pattern, the equation with variables. So it would be a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. Square, double, square. All right, so again, creating perfect square trinomials is important to the process in completing the square. All right, you'll see as we do this, we need to make them so that we can get the binomial squared, so then that we can take square root of both sides of the equation, and we'll get to that. So there's a pattern for perfect square trinomials. The outside terms are perfect squares, and the middle term is twice the product of the two terms. It's a long way of saying square, double, square. Completing the square is a process that helps us solve quadratic equations. whether or not the expression can be factored. All right, so notice the relationship between the middle term and the last term of the following. So if we had x plus 7 squared, if we double squared it, first term would be x squared. All right, double, multiply 7 times x, double it, that'd be 14x. Square, 7 squared would give us 49, okay? So the relationship between the middle term and the last term is in a perfect square trinomial. If you divide b by 2 and square it, it gives you the third term. So in this case, if you took 14 divided by 2, that would give you 7. Square it, it gives you the third term of a perfect square trinomial, okay? b divided by 2 squared gives you the third term of a perfect square trinomial, okay? All right. This relationship helps establish the process for completing the square. If a quadratic expression is in the form x squared plus bx, all right, step 1, find half of b, the coefficient of x. So what would be half of b here? 8. 16 divided by 2 gives us 8. Then we're going to square the result. What's 8 squared? 64. Add the result of step 2 to x squared plus bx. And x squared plus 16x plus 64 would be a perfect square trinomial, okay? So I'm going to kind of jump to the next step here. We'll go over this more on Friday. But again, the whole reason why we want to make perfect square trinomials is for the binomial squared it's equal to. That's how we're going to solve. So in this case right here, x squared plus 16x plus 64, if you were to factor it, the binomial squared it'd be equal to would be x plus 8 squared, okay? It's the same thing, all right? Now, pretty easy to factor that, right? 8 times 8 is 64. 8 plus 8 is 16. But what do you notice about this 8? Where do you see another 8 on here? That's what we got when we divided by 2, right? When we divide b by 2, that number is always going to be what's in parentheses there. Just like a little shortcut. A little shortcut there, okay? But again, we'll do more of that Friday. Number 1, what would C be? 25, very good. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Squared gives us 25. Number 2, what would C be? 900. Good. 3, we're going to have a fraction. Don't do a decimal. It didn't give you a decimal. Huh?
2 1/4.
Good. 9/4 is what I would say, but I'll take 2 1/4. All right, 4, you can do a decimal. Find out what C would be on number 4. What'd you get?
2.56.
Good. C would be 2.56. Appreciate you taking a stand there, Royce.
I'm not doing that.
All right, number 5. What would C be?
1/16. Yeah.
Good, 1/16. 1/2 divided by 2. Remember, when we divide fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. 1/4 squared gives me 1/16. All right, last one here, number 6.
1.5625.
Good. I just left it as 1.56. Okay, good. All right, we will finish the back of this note sheet next class.